The waitress with a fading bruise poured coffee for a quiet biker when a detective walked in. Her hand started to shake. What the biker didn't know, this small diner stop would change everything. The neon sign buzzed like a dying wasp. Route 19 Diner, open 24 hours. Half the letters had burned out years ago, leaving only Route 1 Inner, glowing weakly against the storm. Cole Maddox killed his motorcycle engine and sat in the rain for a moment, letting the cold water run down his leather jacket. 3 days on the road. 3 days of running from nothing and toward nothing. That's what his life had become, a straight line with no destination. He pushed through the diner's glass door, and a bell chimed overhead. The place smelled like burnt coffee and old grease. 2 truckers sat at the far end of the counter, barely awake. A cook with tired eyes flipped burgers behind the kitchen window. And then there was her. The waitress looked up from wiping down a table, and Cole saw it immediately, the faint purple bruise along her left cheekbone, poorly covered with makeup. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that had learned to smile even when nothing was funny. "Sit anywhere you like," she said, her voice soft but steady. Cole chose a booth near the window where he could watch the parking lot. Old habits. The kind you pick up when you've spent 2 years in prison for a crime you didn't commit. She walked over with a pot of coffee, and he noticed her hand shook slightly as she poured. "Menu?" she asked. "Just the coffee. And whatever pie you've got. Apple or cherry?" "Dealer's choice." She almost smiled at that. "I'll bring you apple. It's better." As she turned to leave, Cole noticed the name stitched on her uniform. Mara. He sipped his coffee and stared out at the rain, watching the headlights of passing cars blur into long streaks of light. He was halfway through his cup when everything changed. A black SUV pulled into the lot, moving slowly, deliberately. It parked directly under the flickering light pole, and Cole felt his stomach tighten. He knew that vehicle. He knew it the way you know a scar on your own skin. Mara's reflection appeared in the window glass. She'd gone completely still, the coffee pot frozen in her hand. Her breath came faster now, shallow and tight. She walked to Cole's table, moving like someone trying not to run. "More coffee?" she asked, but her voice was different now, thinner, stretched. "Sure." As she poured, she leaned in close enough that Cole could smell her lavender shampoo mixed with the diner's grease. "He's here again," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. The diner door swung open. Detective Marcus Rowe stepped inside, shaking rain from his expensive suit jacket. He was tall, mid-40s, with silver streaks in his dark hair and the kind of smile that made people trust him right before he destroyed their lives. Cole knew that smile. He'd seen it in a courtroom 6 years ago when Rowe took the stand and lied under oath, sending an innocent man to prison. Cole kept his eyes on his coffee cup, his face neutral. Rowe hadn't seen him yet. Hadn't recognized the skinny kid he'd framed as the weathered biker sitting in the corner booth. "Evening, Mara," Rowe said, his voice smooth as oil. "How's business tonight?" "Slow," she replied, her professional smile back in place. "The usual? You know me too well." Rowe took a seat at the counter, and Mara moved behind it to pour his coffee. The 2 truckers paid their bill and left, the bell chiming as they disappeared into the rain. Now it was just Cole, Mara, the cook, and the man who'd stolen 2 years of Cole's life. Cole watched through the reflection in the window as Rowe leaned across the counter, his voice dropping low. Mara's shoulders tensed. Whatever Rowe was saying, it wasn't friendly. His hand reached out and grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to remind her who had the power. The cook in the kitchen kept his head down, pretending not to notice. Cole's hands curled into fists under the table. Every instinct screamed at him to stand up, to walk over there, to make Rowe answer for everything. But prison had taught him patience. It had taught him that the loudest move wasn't always the smartest one. After what felt like hours but was probably only 2 minutes, Roe released Mara's wrist and stood up. He dropped a $20 bill on the counter, too much for a cup of coffee. A message, not a tip. "You take care now," Roe said, still smiling. Then he walked out, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him. The SUV's engine roared to life, and the vehicle pulled away, its red taillights disappearing into the darkness. Mara stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the $20 bill like it was a snake. Cole waited 5 minutes, then stood and dropped his own cash on the table. As he headed toward the door, Mara caught up with him. "Your pie," she said. "I forgot your pie." "It's fine." "Wait," she glanced toward the kitchen where the cook had his back turned. Her hand darted into her apron pocket and came out holding a napkin. In one smooth motion, she slipped it into Cole's jacket pocket, her fingers barely brushing the leather. Their eyes met for half a second. Hers were pleading. His were questioning. Then she stepped back, her professional mask sliding into place. "Drive safe out there. Roads are bad tonight." Cole nodded and walked out into the rain. He sat on his motorcycle for a long moment, rain soaking through his jeans, engine off. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the napkin. He unfolded it carefully, shielding it from the rain with his jacket. Inside, written in shaky blue pen, were a string of numbers, coordinates, he realized. Latitude and longitude. And below that, one word in capital letters, underlined 3 times. Help. Cole stared at the napkin until the ink began to blur from the rain. Then he carefully folded it, put it back in his pocket, and started his engine. Behind him, through the diner's rain-streaked window, he could see Mara wiping down tables, moving through the motions of her shift like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. And Cole Maddox, who had spent 6 years running from his past, suddenly had a reason to stop. He twisted the throttle and disappeared into the storm, the napkin burning like a coal in his pocket. The road stretched out before him, dark and endless. But for the first time in years, Cole knew exactly where he was going. Dawn broke cold and gray over the desert. Cole had ridden through the night, following the coordinates on his phone, watching the little blue dot inch closer to the red pin he dropped on the map. The location wasn't what he expected. He stood now at the edge of an empty stretch of highway, nothing around him but scrub brush and dust. An old billboard loomed overhead, its paint peeled and faded, advertising a casino that had probably closed a decade ago. The wooden support beams were rotting, covered in graffiti and bullet holes. Cole checked his phone again. This was it. The exact spot. He walked a slow circle around the billboard's base, scanning the ground. At first, there was nothing, just dirt, broken glass, and the rusted remains of a chain-link fence. Then he saw it. A disturbed patch of earth near the southeast support beam, partially hidden by a clump of dead sagebrush. Someone had been digging here recently. Cole dropped to his knees and started clearing away the loose dirt with his hands. 6 inches down, his fingers hit metal. He dug faster now, uncovering the edges of a rectangular lockbox, the kind you'd buy at a hardware store for $50. It was secured with a simple combination lock, but the metal was old and the hinges were rusted. Cole pulled a small tool from his jacket, old prison habit, and worked the lock. It popped open in 30 seconds. Inside, wrapped in a plastic freezer bag to keep out moisture, were 3 items. First, a flash drive, labeled in the same shaky handwriting from the napkin, Roe, backup copy. Second, a stack of bank receipts, maybe 20 pages thick, paper-clipped together. Cole flipped through them quickly. Wire transfers, cash deposits, all routed through something called Highway 19 Holdings LLC. The amounts were staggering, $50,000 here, $80,000 there. And every receipt had a handwritten notation in the corner, initials and dates. Third, a photograph, slightly bent at the corners. Detective Rowe stood outside a construction site, shaking hands with a man Cole recognized from news reports, Vincent Caro, a contractor who'd been investigated twice for bribing city officials. Both times, the charges had mysteriously disappeared. In the background of the photo, barely visible, was the Route 19 diner. Cole's hands went cold. Mara wasn't just afraid of Roe. She'd been investigating him. Collecting evidence. Building a case piece by piece, probably for months. Maybe years. And now she'd handed him the key to everything. He checked his phone, no signal out here. He'd have to ride back toward civilization to call anyone, but who would he even call? The police? Roe was the police. The FBI? They'd want evidence, explanations, things Cole didn't have time to provide. No. First, he needed to warn Mara. Make sure she was safe. He secured the lockbox contents in his saddlebag and rode back the way he'd come, pushing the motorcycle harder than he should have on the rough desert roads. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the landscape into shimmering waves of heat. 2 hours later, he pulled into the Route 19 diner parking lot. Something was wrong immediately. The "Open" sign was dark. 2 of the windows had their blinds drawn, something that hadn't been the case last night. And Mara's beat-up Honda Civic, which had been parked near the dumpster when he'd left, was gone. Cole parked and tried the door. Locked. He walked around to the side entrance, the one the staff used. Also locked. Through the window, he could see the interior, empty tables, chairs still stacked from closing, everything quiet. He knocked hard on the glass. Hello? Anyone here? A moment later, the cook from last night appeared, the same tired-eyed man who'd kept his head down when Roe had threatened Mara. He unlocked the door but didn't open it wide, keeping the chain on. "We're closed for cleaning," the cook said. "I'm looking for Mara. The waitress from last night." The cook's expression didn't change. "She don't work here anymore." "What do you mean she doesn't work here?" "Quit this morning. Came in, cleared out her locker, told the manager she was done. Didn't even give 2 weeks' notice." The cook started to close the door. Cole wedged his boot against it. "Where'd she go?" "Didn't say." "Look, man, I don't know nothing about nothing, and I'd like to keep it that way. You understand?" Their eyes met, and Cole saw it, the fear. The same fear that had been in Mara's eyes when Roe walked in. "Yeah," Cole said quietly, pulling his boot back. "I understand." The door clicked shut. The lock turned. Cole walked back to his motorcycle and stood there for a long moment, thinking. Mara had vanished within hours of giving him the coordinates. That wasn't coincidence. She'd planned this. Given him the evidence, then disappeared before Roe could connect them. She was running. Hiding. And she was doing it alone. Cole pulled out the stack of bank receipts from his saddlebag and started going through them more carefully this time, looking for anything that might tell him where Mara had gone. Most of the transactions listed the same generic business names, the same construction companies. Then, near the bottom of the stack, he found something different. A receipt from a small-town bank, dated just 3 weeks ago. The notation in the corner read, M.C., secondary account, Millfield Station. Millfield Station. A town Cole had passed through once, maybe 2 hours south. Small enough to disappear in, big enough to have basic services. It wasn't much. But it was something. Cole secured the evidence back in his saddlebag, started his engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. In his rearview mirror, the Route 19 diner grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Mara had asked for help. And Cole Maddox didn't break promises, even ones written on napkins by strangers. Millfield Station wasn't on most maps. It was the kind of town you passed through on the way to somewhere else: one main street, a post office that doubled as a general store, and a gas station with pumps so old they still had analog dials. Cole found her on his second pass through town. She was working at the Fuel and Go, a sad little convenience store attached to the gas station. Through the smudged window, he could see her behind the register, wearing a different uniform now, red instead of the Route 19 diner's faded blue. Her hair was different too, cut shorter and dyed a few shades darker. But it was definitely Mara. Cole parked his motorcycle around the side, out of direct view from the main road, and walked in. A bell chimed. Seemed like every place in America had the same damn bell. Mara looked up from restocking cigarettes behind the counter. Their eyes met, and Cole watched the color drain from her face. For a second, he thought she might run. Then recognition kicked in, followed by something else. Relief, maybe. Or resignation. "We're out of the breakfast sandwiches," she said carefully, her voice neutral. "Won't have more until the delivery truck comes tomorrow." "That's fine," Cole replied, playing along. "Just need coffee. And maybe a word." She glanced toward the back office where a small TV was playing. Her manager, probably. "My break's in 10 minutes. There's a picnic table out back." Cole nodded and bought a coffee he didn't want. He went outside and sat at the weathered table, watching the highway. A few cars passed. A semi-truck. A family in an RV, normal people living normal lives, completely unaware of the corruption festering in their small towns. 8 minutes later, Mara emerged from the side door. She'd brought 2 coffees, apparently the one Cole bought wasn't drinkable. Smart woman. She sat across from him, her hands wrapped around the styrofoam cup like she needed the warmth despite the desert heat. "You found it," she said quietly. "I found it." "Then you know." "I know Roe's dirty. I know he's running money through shell companies. I know you've been collecting evidence." Cole leaned forward. "What I don't know is why you disappeared." Mara stared into her coffee. "Because staying would have gotten me killed. Or worse, arrested for something I didn't do. Roe's good at making evidence disappear. He's even better at making new evidence appear." "Yeah," Cole said, his voice hard. "I know all about that." Something in his tone made her look up. Really look at him. 6 years ago, Cole continued, Roe arrested me for armed robbery. Said I held up a liquor store, pistol-whipped the owner. I was home that night, watching TV alone. No alibi. No witnesses. But Roe had security footage, grainy, dark, showed someone my height and build. Had my jacket that they recovered from a dumpster 2 blocks away, owner's blood on it. He took a sip of coffee, the bitterness matching his memories. Took the jury 40 minutes to convict me. I did 2 years before my lawyer found evidence the footage had been tampered with. By then, the real robber had fled the state, and Roe had been promoted to detective. They let me out, but my record wasn't sealed. It just says, conviction overturned on technical grounds, like I got off on a technicality, not because I was innocent. Mara's hand trembled on her cup. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just tell me what happened to you. She took a breath. My brother, Danny. He was an accountant for the city, nothing special. Just a guy who liked numbers and followed rules. Last year, he noticed something weird in the municipal contracts, money disappearing, bids being awarded to the same companies over and over, always just under the threshold that would trigger federal oversight. Let me guess, Cole said. He reported it. To Roe. Because Roe was head of the Financial Crimes Unit. Danny thought he was doing the right thing, her voice cracked slightly. 3 days later, they found child pornography on Danny's work computer. He was arrested, tried, convicted. He's in Oak Ridge State Prison now, serving 8 years. And you don't think he did it? I know he didn't do it. Danny coaches Little League. He volunteers at the Children's Hospital. He's the most decent person I've ever known. Mara's eyes blazed with fierce certainty. So I started digging. I got a job at Route 19 because I noticed Ro came in 3 times a week, always met with the same people. I started photographing license plates, copying receipts from the register when certain customers paid cash, listening to conversations. That's dangerous work. It's the only work that matters. She looked at him directly. Ro uses the diner as a neutral meeting spot. Cash gets handed over, deals get made, and everyone looks like regular customers. The owner gets a cut to keep quiet. It's been going on for at least 5 years, maybe longer. Cole pulled out the photograph from his jacket. This was in the box. You and your brother? Mara took the photo. It showed a younger version of her, smiling, arm around a man who shared her dark hair and sharp cheekbones. They were at some kind of outdoor festival, both holding snow cones and laughing at something off camera. 4th of July, 2 years ago, she whispered. Before everything went to hell. Cole let her have a moment with the memory, then asked the question that had been burning in his mind. Why me? Why give the evidence to some random biker you'd never met? Mara looked up, and her eyes were steady now. Clear. Because I watched you watch Ro. I saw your face when he walked in, the recognition, the anger, the way you held yourself back. She set down her coffee. You weren't random. You were someone who understood. And I was running out of time and options. What made you think I wouldn't just take the evidence and sell it back to Ro? Because, she said simply, you ordered pie at midnight in a roadside diner and said dealer's choice. Only decent people talk like that. Despite everything, Cole almost smiled. So, Mara said. What now? Cole thought about it, about Ro's smug face in that courtroom, about 2 years of his life stolen, about a man named Danny rotting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Now, he said, we stop running. And we make this right. They left Millfield Station before dawn, Mara riding behind Cole on his motorcycle, her small backpack containing everything she owned pressed between them. The highway stretched empty and dark, headlight cutting through the morning mist like a blade. Where are we going? Mara shouted over the wind. Following the money, Cole shouted back. The first receipt in the stack listed a storage facility in a town called Copper Ridge, 40 miles west. According to the notation, Ro had rented Unit 247 under Highway 19 Holdings LLC 3 years ago and visited it quarterly. They reached Copper Ridge as the sun was climbing, painting the desert in shades of amber and rust. The storage facility sat at the edge of town, desert lock storage, a tired collection of orange metal units surrounded by chain-link fence. Cole pulled up to the office. A bored teenager sat behind the desk, scrolling through his phone. Help you? The kid asked without looking up. Yeah, I'm here to check on Unit 247. Highway 19 Holdings. Now the kid looked up. You got ID? Payment records? Cole pulled out 3 $20 bills and set them on the counter. I've got this. And a story about how I lost my keys and really need to get in there today. The kid looked at the money, then at Cole's road-worn face, then at Mara standing nervously by the door. Whatever he saw made him decide $60 was worth not asking questions. Gate codes 4792. Don't break nothing, and I never saw you. Unit 247 was in the back corner, away from the main entrance. Cole cut the lock with bolt cutters he'd bought at a hardware store, old habits again, and rolled up the metal door. Inside were 4 filing cabinets and a dozen cardboard boxes. Jackpot, Mara whispered. They spent 2 hours going through everything. The filing cabinets contained contracts, invoices, and payment records for construction projects dating back 5 years. Every project had inflated costs, phantom workers, materials that were never delivered. And every project funneled money back to a network of shell companies. But it was the cardboard boxes that told the real story. Cole, Mara said, her voice tight. Look at this. She held up a ledger, handwritten entries in neat columns. Names, dates, and amounts. But these weren't construction payments. These were bribes, payoffs to city council members, county commissioners, even a state senator. Each entry noted what the payment was for: zoning approval, contract awards, inspection waivers. This isn't just Roe, Cole said, scanning the names. This goes all the way up. Which means we can't just walk into a police station and hand this over. No, Cole agreed. We need someone outside the system. They loaded the most critical documents into Mara's backpack and Cole's saddlebags, then closed the unit and left. The bored teenager didn't even look up as they passed the office. Their next stop was 70 miles east, a tiny town called Ridgeline, where another receipt showed a transaction at M&M Accounting Services. The accounting office was above a hardware store, accessed by an exterior staircase. The door was locked, but through the window, Cole could see files scattered across a desk, drawers pulled open. Someone's already been here, Mara said. Cole tried the door handle. Locked, but the wood frame was old. One hard shoulder check, and it splintered open. Inside, the office had been searched, but not by professionals. Whoever had done this was desperate. They'd torn through everything, leaving papers strewn across the floor, file folders empty and tossed aside. Looking for the same thing we are, Cole said. Mara knelt and started sorting through the papers. Wait, here's something they missed. She held up a thin folder that had slipped behind a radiator. Inside was a single spreadsheet, formatted differently from the others. This one tracked payments going out of Highway 19 holdings to individual bank accounts. Personal accounts. And one name appeared more than any other: Marcus Rowe. He's been paying himself, Mara said. Taking extra off the top. His partners probably don't even know. Cole smiled grimly. So Rowe's not just corrupt, he's a thief among thieves. That's leverage, Mara said, understanding dawning in her eyes. If his partners find out he's been stealing from them, they'll turn on him faster than we ever could. They left Ridgeline with the sun high overhead, stopping at a roadside rest area to compare what they'd found. Spread across a picnic table were bank statements, contracts, photographs, and the damning ledger. It's still not enough, Mara said, frustration creeping into her voice. We have evidence of the money trail, but we need proof of the corruption itself. We need someone to testify. Then we find someone, Cole said. There's always someone who knows too much and feels guilty about it. As they packed everything away, Cole noticed Mara staring at the horizon, her expression distant. What are you thinking about? He asked. Danny. How every day he's in that place is another day stolen from his life. She turned to Cole. You know what that feels like. Yeah, Cole said quietly. I do. Does it ever stop? The anger? Cole thought about it, about the rage that had burned in him for 6 years, the bitterness that had colored everything. Then he thought about the last 48 hours, about having a purpose again, about Mara's determination and courage. I don't know if it stops, he said honestly. But maybe it changes into something useful. Mara nodded slowly. We're going to get them, right? All of them? Every last one, Cole promised. They mounted the motorcycle again, but this time when Mara wrapped her arms around his waist, it felt less like a stranger seeking safety and more like a partner holding on for the ride. The desert highway stretched before them, shimmering with heat and possibility. Somewhere out there were more answers, more pieces of the puzzle. And somewhere behind them, Rowe was probably beginning to realize that his carefully constructed empire was developing cracks. Cole twisted the throttle, and they accelerated into the afternoon sun. The road had become more than an escape now. It had become their weapon. 3 days and 5 towns later, Cole and Mara checked into a motel on the outskirts of the city, far enough from Rowe's territory to breathe, close enough to make their next move. The room was cheap and clean, with 2 beds and a table where they spread out their evidence like pieces of a massive puzzle. We need help, Mara said, staring at the documents. Real help. Someone who knows how this system works. Cole had been thinking the same thing. The ledger mentioned a name I recognized, Harper. Former police captain. He testified at my trial, said Rowe was one of his best detectives. But his testimony felt forced. Like someone was holding a gun to his head. You think he'd talk to us? Only one way to find out. They found Captain Robert Harper living in a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people mowed their lawns on Saturday and waved to their neighbors. He answered the door in jeans and a faded police academy t-shirt, his gray hair cut military short. When he saw Cole, his face went pale. You, Harper said. The Maddox case. The frame job, you mean, Cole said evenly. Harper's jaw tightened. For a moment, Cole thought the door would slam in his face. Then Harper glanced past him at Mara, saw something in her expression, and sighed deeply. You better come in. Inside, Harper's house was neat and spare, a man living alone, but living with discipline. They sat at his kitchen table, and Cole laid out everything, the evidence from the storage unit, the ledger, the photographs, the receipts. Harper studied each document with a cop's eye, his expression growing darker with every page. I knew it was bad, he finally said. I didn't know it was this bad. You knew Rowe was corrupt? Mara asked. I suspected. 5 years ago, I started noticing things, cases that disappeared, evidence that went missing, witnesses who suddenly stopped cooperating. I tried to investigate quietly, but, he stopped, his hands clenching into fists. They came after my daughter. Nothing overt, just implications. A car following her home from college. Strange phone calls. I got the message. So you backed off, Cole said. No judgment in his voice, just understanding. I backed off. Took early retirement. Told myself I was being smart, protecting my family. Harper looked at Cole. Then I had to sit in that courtroom and watch Rowe destroy you. I knew the evidence was fabricated. I knew you were innocent. And I said nothing. The silence hung heavy between them. I'm saying something now, Harper continued. What do you need? An affidavit, Mara said. Your testimony about Rowe's corruption, about the intimidation, about everything you know. We need someone with credibility, someone the system will listen to. Harper nodded slowly. I can do that. But you need more than my word. You need a journalist, someone who can break this story wide enough that it can't be buried. You know someone? Maybe. There's a reporter at the Sentinel, Jamie Chen. Young, hungry, won't let go of a story once she's got her teeth in it. She's been trying to investigate city corruption for 2 years, but no one will talk to her. He looked at the evidence spread across his table. This would change that. By evening, they were sitting in a coffee shop across from Jamie Chen. She was younger than Cole expected, maybe 26, with sharp eyes behind black-rimmed glasses and a recording device she'd placed on the table the moment they sat down. Let me get this straight, Jamie said, flipping through photographs. You're telling me Detective Marcus Rowe has been running a corruption ring for 5 years, involving construction contracts, bribery of public officials, and evidence tampering? At least 5 years, Mara corrected. Could be longer. Jamie looked at Harper. Captain, you're willing to go on record? I am. Even though it'll cost you your pension, your reputation, probably your freedom if they find a way to charge you with obstruction? Harper met her gaze steadily. Some prices are worth paying. Jamie sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. This is the story I've been waiting for my entire career. She looked at Cole and Mara. But we need to be smart about this. If we publish too soon, they'll bury it. We need irrefutable proof, not just documents, but something that can't be explained away. Like what? Cole asked. Like Roe's own words. A confession, or close to it. Something that shows intent, conspiracy, consciousness of guilt. Jamie's mind was clearly racing. We need to catch him in the act. How? Mara asked. We set a trap, Jamie said. We make him think he's in control, make him comfortable enough to talk freely. And we record everything. Harper leaned forward. That's dangerous. If he suspects anything. He won't, Cole interrupted, an idea forming. Because he won't be suspicious of his own people turning on him. They spent the next 2 hours planning, arguing, refining. By the time the coffee shop closed, they had a strategy. It was risky, borderline insane, but it might work. As they prepared to leave, Harper pulled Cole aside. 6 years ago, I failed you, the older man said quietly. I let fear make me a coward. I can't undo that, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Cole extended his hand. Harper shook it. We're going to need a safe house, Mara said, rejoining them. Somewhere we can work without being found. Harper smiled slightly. My daughter's at grad school. Her apartment is empty, and it's registered under her married name. No connection to me or any of you. Then that's our base, Jamie said. We have 3 days, maybe 4, before Roe realizes something's wrong. Let's make them count. They left the coffee shop separately, carefully, watching for tails. The city lights sparkled around them, beautiful and indifferent to the storm that was brewing. In a rundown motel room across town, Cole sat on the edge of his bed, watching Mara review documents at the small table. She'd changed over the past few days, still careful, still afraid, but with steel underneath now. Purpose had a way of doing that. Thank you, she said without looking up. For what? For not leaving. For staying when you could have just taken the evidence and disappeared. Cole thought about that. I spent 2 years learning that the world doesn't care about innocent people. Maybe it's time to prove myself wrong. Mara looked up, and for the first time since he'd met her, she smiled, really smiled. Yeah, she said. Maybe it is. The city diner wasn't like Route 19. It was upscale, with polished chrome fixtures and leather booths, the kind of place where politicians held breakfast meetings and business deals were sealed over expensive coffee. It sat in the heart of downtown, visible from a dozen angles, which made it perfect for what they needed. Jamie had spent 2 days setting everything up. Miniature microphones disguised as shirt buttons, a backup recording device hidden in a purse, and a camera phone positioned at just the right angle. Harper had made the call that morning, using his old connections to arrange a meeting between Roe and his superior, Captain Brennan, under the pretense of discussing departmental irregularities. Now they waited. Cole and Mara sat in a booth near the back, far enough to seem uninvolved but close enough for their microphones to pick up everything. Cole wore a borrowed sport jacket that made him uncomfortable, too clean, too respectable. Mara had traded her gas station uniform for a simple dress, her hair pulled back, bruises long faded. They looked like any young couple having lunch. Nervous? Cole asked quietly, his hand resting near hers on the table. Terrified, Mara admitted. You? Same. Jamie sat alone at the counter, laptop open, pretending to work. The recording equipment was linked to her computer through an encrypted connection. Everything Roe said would be captured, backed up, and uploaded to a secure cloud server in real time. At exactly noon, Detective Marcus Roe walked in. He wore his usual expensive suit, his confidence worn like armor. He scanned the restaurant with practiced ease, cop's eyes, always cataloging exits and threats. His gaze passed over Cole and Mara without recognition. Just another couple. Nothing important. Roe slid into a booth near the window and ordered coffee. 5 minutes later, Captain David Brennan arrived. He was older than Roe, 50s, with a weathered face and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. He'd been with the department for 30 years, and according to Harper, he was one of the few clean cops left in the division. He was also completely unaware he was being recorded. Brennan sat across from Rowe, and their conversation started casually: sports, weather, department gossip. Cole watched from his peripheral vision, forcing himself to eat his sandwich slowly, naturally. Then Brennan's tone shifted. "Marcus, we need to talk about the Highway 19 situation." Rowe's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "What situation?" "Robert Harper came to see me yesterday. He's making some serious allegations about financial improprieties, evidence tampering. Says he has documents." Cole felt Mara tense beside him. This wasn't part of the plan. Harper had convinced Brennan to meet with Rowe, but he'd said nothing about visiting him first. Rowe set down his cup carefully. "Harper's been retired for 5 years. He's bitter, probably drinking too much. You know how it is." "I do know how it is," Brennan said. "Which is why I need to ask you directly, is there any truth to what he's saying?" The diner seemed to hold its breath. Rowe leaned back, and his expression shifted into something Cole recognized, the face of a man who'd talked his way out of 100 tight spots and expected to talk his way out of this one too. "David, we've worked together for what, 12 years? Have I ever given you reason to doubt me?" "That's not an answer, Marcus." "Because it's a ridiculous question." Rowe's voice carried an edge now. "Harper makes some wild accusations, and suddenly I'm the one being interrogated? What about loyalty? What about trust?" Brennan folded his hands on the table. "Then help me understand. These construction contracts Harper mentioned, Highway 19 Holdings, Desert Lock Storage. Can you explain your connection to those companies?" Rowe smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They're legitimate businesses. I've consulted with them on security matters. Everything's documented and above board." "Then you won't mind if Internal Affairs takes a look?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Is that what this is?" Rowe asked quietly. "An IA investigation? Based on the word of a disgraced ex-cop?" "I'm trying to protect you, Marcus. If there's an innocent explanation." "The innocent explanation is that Harper's trying to settle old scores, and you're letting him manipulate you." Rowe leaned forward. "You know how many people I've put away? How many enemies I've made? This is what they do, they throw mud, hope something sticks." Brennan studied him for a long moment. "I want to believe you." "Then believe me." Rowe's voice dropped lower, intimate, almost pleading. "We're on the same side here, David. We've always been on the same side." Cole watched Mara from the corner of his eye. Her face was pale, her hands clenched in her lap. This wasn't working. Rowe was too smooth, too careful. He wasn't going to confess to anything. Then Mara did something unexpected. She stood up, grabbed her water glass, and as she walked past Rowe's booth, she stumbled, not obviously, just enough. The water splashed across the table, soaking the papers Brennan had brought. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Mara exclaimed, grabbing napkins. "I'm so clumsy." "It's fine," Brennan said, standing quickly, dabbing at his jacket. But in the confusion, in those few seconds of distraction, Mara's hand swept across the table. When she pulled back, she had Brennan's phone, the one he'd set down when he arrived. She stumbled again, this time toward their booth, pressing the phone into Cole's hand under cover of apologizing profusely. Cole's fingers flew across the screen. Harper had told them Brennan's password, a desperate backup plan they'd hoped not to use. The phone unlocked. Cole found what he needed in seconds: text messages between Brennan and Rowe, dozens of them, going back months. His blood went cold as he read. Brennan wasn't investigating Rowe. He was protecting him. The meeting wasn't about justice, it was about damage control. Cole took 3 photos of the message thread, then slipped the phone back to Mara. She returned it to Brennan's table with more apologies, and they quickly paid their bill and left. Outside, Jamie was already in her car, laptop still recording. Cole and Mara climbed in the back. "Tell me you got something," Jamie said. "Better," Cole said, showing her the photos. "Brennan's dirty too. He's been warning Roe about investigations for years." Jamie's eyes went wide. "This changes everything." "How?" Mara asked. "Because now we know we can't trust the system at all. We have to go public, immediately, everything at once, before they can cover it up." Jamie was already typing. "I'm sending this to my editor, to 3 other news outlets, and to the FBI field office. We flood the zone, make it too big to bury." Through the diner window, they could see Roe and Brennan still talking. Roe was laughing now, relaxed, confident. He thought he'd won. "How long do we have?" Mara asked. Jamie checked her watch. "Story goes live in 3 hours. After that, it's out of our hands." Cole looked at Mara. 3 hours until their lives changed forever, one way or another. "Then we'd better find somewhere safe to wait," he said. They watched from Harper's daughter's apartment as the world caught fire. Jamie's story went live at 6 p.m. sharp. Within minutes, it was everywhere: news sites, social media, television broadcasts. The headline screamed across every screen: "Detectives' corruption ring, years of bribery, evidence tampering, and conspiracy exposed." The article was devastating. Jamie had included everything: the ledger entries, the photographs, the bank receipts, Harper's sworn affidavit, and most damning of all, the text messages between Roe and Brennan showing their conspiracy to obstruct justice. But she'd also included something else, something they discovered in the final hours before publication. Cole's original arrest file, with metadata showing the security footage had been edited 2 days after the robbery. The blood evidence, logged into the system with timestamps that proved it had been found after Roe already knew Cole's name. The frame job wasn't just corrupt. It was sloppy. And now everyone could see it. "It's working," Harper said, watching his phone blow up with messages from old colleagues. "The department's in chaos. Half the force is calling for Roe's head, the other half is lawyering up." Mara sat by the window, her phone in her hand, not watching the news but staring at a single contact: Danny. She'd written a message 3 times and deleted it 3 times. "What do you say to someone who's been in prison for a year because of your investigation?" Cole sat beside her. "He'll understand." "Will he?" "I've been investigating this for months while he's been locked up. I could have moved faster, been smarter." "You did what you could," Cole interrupted gently. "Trust me, when you're inside, you don't blame the people trying to help. You blame the ones who put you there." Mara finally pressed send. "Danny. Watch the news. It's happening. Love you." Jamie was on her 3rd phone call with her editor, fielding questions from other reporters who wanted to interview them. "No, they're not available for comment yet. Yes, I can confirm the authenticity. You'll have to submit a FOIA request for that." Harper's phone rang. He looked at the screen and went pale. "It's the FBI." Everyone froze. He answered. "This is Robert Harper." A pause. "Yes, I'm the one who signed the affidavit." Another pause, longer. "I understand. Tomorrow morning at 10. I'll be there." He hung up and looked at the group. "They want me to come in for a full debriefing. They're opening a federal investigation." "That's good, right?" Mara asked. "That's very good," Harper said. "The FBI doesn't move this fast unless they already know there's fire under all this smoke." Cole's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "You did this." His chest tightened. Then another message: "Thank you." He frowned, then realized, it was from someone he'd been in prison with, someone else Roe had likely framed. Word was spreading among Roe's victims. More texts came in, one after another. People he'd never met, sharing their stories of how Roe had destroyed their lives. The messages kept coming, dozens of them, a flood of voices that had been silenced for years finally speaking up. "Cole," Jamie said suddenly, turning her laptop around. "You need to see this." On the screen was a live news broadcast. The police department's main entrance was surrounded by reporters, cameras, and bright lights. And walking out in handcuffs, flanked by federal agents, was Detective Marcus Roe. His expensive suit was rumpled, his confident smirk gone. He kept his head down, refusing to look at the cameras, but there was no hiding now. Behind him came Captain Brennan, also in handcuffs, his face gray with shock. The news anchor's voice crackled through the speakers, being taken into federal custody on charges of conspiracy, bribery, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. Sources say this is just the beginning, with more arrests expected in the coming days. Mara's hand found Cole's and squeezed tight. They watched in silence as Roe was loaded into an unmarked car, the door closing on 6 years of corruption. "It's over," Mara whispered. "Not yet," Harper said, but his voice was gentle. "The trial will take months. There'll be testimony, cross-examinations, deals and counter-deals. This is just the beginning." But Cole understood what Mara meant. The fear was over. The running was over. The silence was over. His phone rang, his lawyer, the one who'd gotten his conviction overturned on technical grounds. Cole answered. "Cole? Jesus Christ, kid, I've been trying to reach you for an hour. The DA's office just called. They're moving to expunge your record completely, full exoneration, not just overturned. They're also talking about compensation for wrongful imprisonment." Cole's throat tightened. "How much time?" "Paperwork could be done in a week. 2 at most," the lawyer's voice cracked slightly. "Cole, I'm sorry it took this long. I'm sorry I couldn't do more." "You did enough," Cole said. "Thank you." He hung up and looked at Mara. "My record's being cleared. Officially innocent." She threw her arms around him, and for the first time since they'd met, she was crying, not from fear or frustration, but from relief. Jamie's phone rang again. She listened, then covered the mic. "It's the prosecutor's office. They want to review Danny's case. They're saying with Roe's corruption exposed, they have grounds for immediate appeal." Mara pulled back from Cole, hope blazing in her eyes. "How immediate?" Jamie asked, then relayed the answer. "Emergency hearing. Tomorrow afternoon. If the judge agrees the evidence was tainted, Danny could be released pending a new trial, which they'll probably dismiss entirely." The room fell silent except for the television, which had moved on to interviewing legal experts about the scope of the corruption. One of them estimated at least 40 cases would need to be reviewed, maybe more. 40 people whose lives Roe had destroyed. 40 families torn apart. But now, finally, there was a chance to make it right. Harper stood and raised his coffee cup. "To justice. Better late than never." They all raised their cups, coffee, water, whatever was closest. It wasn't champagne, wasn't fancy. But it was real. "To justice," they echoed. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in a federal holding cell, Marcus Roe was beginning to understand what it felt like to have power stripped away. Somewhere in Oak Ridge State Prison, Danny was probably watching the news, barely daring to hope. And in a modest apartment overlooking the city, 4 people who'd been strangers a week ago stood together, exhausted and bruised but unbroken. The road had been long. The fight had been hard. But they'd won. 3 months later. The ocean smelled like salt and freedom. Mara stood on the wooden deck of her cafe, watching the morning sun paint golden stripes across the water. Route 19 Roasts had opened 2 weeks ago, a bright little place perched on the coast highway where tourists stopped for the view and locals came for the coffee that was actually good. The building had been a tackle shop once, abandoned and weather-beaten. But Mara had seen potential in the bones of it, the way the windows faced the sunrise, the small deck perfect for outdoor seating, the location just far enough from town to feel like a discovery. She'd used part of the compensation money, hers and Danny's combined, to buy it. The rest went to Danny's fresh start, a small apartment in the city, enrollment in a master's program, therapy sessions to help him process what prison had stolen from him. The bell above the door chimed, and her assistant, Sophie, a college kid saving for tuition, called out, "Table 4 needs a refill." Mara smiled and grabbed the coffee pot. This was her life now. Normal problems. Simple solutions. No more looking over her shoulder, no more fear lurking in every shadow. The trials had been swift once the FBI finished building their case. Rowe got 18 years. Brennan got 12. 6 other officials took plea deals, shorter sentences in exchange for testimony. The corruption ring that had operated for nearly a decade was dismantled in less than 3 months. Harper had been cleared of any wrongdoing after his cooperation. He'd started consulting with police reform organizations now, teaching younger officers about ethics and accountability. Making up for lost time, he'd told Mara last week over coffee. Jamie won a journalism award for her reporting. She'd moved to a bigger paper in the city, still chasing corruption, still refusing to let the powerful hide in shadows. And Cole. The rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the morning air. Mara looked up from wiping tables, and there he was, pulling into the small parking lot. The same weathered leather jacket, the same motorcycle that had carried them through their desperate journey. But something was different about the way he sat, the way he moved. The weight was gone. Cole dismounted and pulled off his helmet, running a hand through his hair. He'd gotten it cut last month, still a bit shaggy, but intentional now instead of neglected. He wore a faint smile, the kind that came easier these days. "You're late," Mara called out as he approached the deck. "I saved you a table, but I gave your muffin to a tourist from Ohio." "Cruel woman," Cole said, climbing the steps. "I drove 3 hours for that muffin." "Then you should have left earlier." He grinned and followed her inside. The cafe was small but welcoming, exposed wooden beams, mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, local art on the walls. A chalkboard menu listed items like the Drifter's Dark Roast and Highway Sunset Blend. Cole took his usual seat by the window, the one where he could see both the ocean and the door. Some habits died hard. Mara brought him coffee, black, no sugar, and a blueberry muffin, because she'd been lying about giving his away. "How was the ride?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. "Good. Clear roads, no rain. Saw 2 eagles and a family of deer." He took a sip of coffee and sighed contentedly. "Thought about some things." "What kind of things?" Cole looked out at the ocean, then back at her. "I've been drifting for 6 years, Mara. After prison, I told myself I'd never stop moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering everything they took from me." He paused. "But these last few months, helping you build this place, watching Danny get his life back, seeing Rowe's victims finally get justice. I realized something." "What's that?" "The best revenge isn't running forever. It's building something they can never take away." Mara felt her throat tighten. "So what are you saying?" Cole pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and set it on the table. It was a lease agreement for a small apartment 2 blocks from the cafe. "I'm saying maybe the road doesn't have to be endless. Maybe it can lead somewhere." "You're staying?" Mara's voice was barely a whisper. "If that's okay with you." She reached across the table and took his hand. Cole Maddox, I've been saving the apartment upstairs for 3 weeks, hoping you'd be dumb enough to keep drifting past it. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from him before. Upstairs is better. Closer to the coffee. Exactly what I thought. They sat there for a moment, hands clasped across the table, the morning sun streaming through the windows. Around them, the cafe hummed with life, Sophie taking orders, tourists exclaiming over the ocean view, the espresso machine hissing and steaming. A young couple came in, the woman with a fading bruise on her arm that her sleeve didn't quite cover. She ordered carefully, watching the door, her voice small. Mara recognized that look. She'd worn it herself not so long ago. When the couple sat down, Mara brought them their coffee personally and slipped a business card onto their table. On it was a number for a local women's shelter, along with a handwritten note, "You're not alone. Call if you need help." The woman looked up, met Mara's eyes, and gave the smallest nod. Cole watched this exchange and smiled. Still saving people. Just paying it forward, Mara said, returning to their table. Someone once helped me when I needed it most. That someone was just a drifter passing through. No, Mara corrected gently. That someone was exactly the right person at exactly the right time. The bell chimed again, and Danny walked in, textbooks under his arm, looking healthier than he had in months. His face lit up when he saw them. "Am I interrupting?" he asked. "Never," Mara said, standing to hug her brother. "Coffee? Is that even a question?" As Mara went to pour Danny's usual order, Cole looked around the cafe, at the sunlight dancing on the walls, at the happy customers, at the life Mara had built from the ashes of everything Roe had tried to destroy. She returned with Danny's coffee and sat back down, her brother pulling up a chair to join them. "So," Danny said, grinning at Cole. "I heard you're sticking around. Looks like it. Good. Someone needs to keep my sister from working 18-hour days." "I do not work 18-hour days," Mara protested. Both men looked at her skeptically. "Okay, maybe 16. They laughed together, and it felt natural, easy, the sound of healing, of family chosen rather than given. Outside, waves crashed against the shore in their eternal rhythm. A pelican dove for fish. A child's laughter carried on the breeze. The world kept turning, indifferent and beautiful. But inside Route 19 roasts, 3 people who'd survived the worst the world could throw at them sat together in the morning light, drinking good coffee and making plans for tomorrow. Mara looked at Cole, really looked at him, at the man who'd been a stranger with haunted eyes and had become something else entirely. Something like hope. "You finally stopped running?" she asked softly. Cole smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Guess I found where the road ends." "And where's that?" He looked around the cafe, at the ocean beyond, at Mara and Danny and the life waiting to be lived. "Right here," he said. "Right exactly here." The neon sign outside hummed softly, Route 19 ROSTS, glowing against the blue morning sky. Inside, the coffee was hot, the muffins were fresh, and 2 souls who'd been broken had finally found their way home. Not in tragedy. Not in revenge. But in the quiet, beautiful triumph of starting over. The end.